Good morning, everybody. Thanks for coming. I'm Alex Dawson. I'm a partner here at Nixon Peabody, and I just wanted to say a quick hello and thank you for coming. This is a great event, and really proud of our sort of partnership relationship with CHAPA and the opportunity to hear from some really smart people about climate initiatives and things that we're all really interested in the affordable housing industry. So without further ado, I'll turn it over to Rachel Heller.
Yeah. Good morning.
Good morning.
There you are. Great. It is my pleasure to welcome you this morning to Preparing Affordable Housing for Climate Funding. I do want to thank our host, Nixon Peabody. It has been a tremendous partnership, and Nixon Peabody supports CHAPA in so many ways, including offering this space so frequently for us to be able to have these forums. So thank you very much. I also want to thank our partners, our members, and our contributors for making our work and forums like this possible, and to the CHAPA team, in particular, Karen Weiner, Marta Crossan, and Sam Ferreira, who put a lot of work into making today possible. At CHAPA, we strive to keep the affordable housing community informed of policies, programs, and issues that impact the production and preservation of affordable housing, and also about the tools that we need to create, preserve, and plan for more of the homes that the Commonwealth needs to thrive. As the effects of climate change are causing more and more harm and becoming clearer to us every day, and people are experiencing an unprecedented need for affordable housing, particularly in communities that have been disinvested in, we're holding this forum today to keep you all apprised of the funds that are coming to Massachusetts to ensure that we can create the affordable and the sustainable homes that people need. And just as intentionality, policies, and funding are vital to meeting our wide range of housing needs, we must also be intentional about how we produce, how we preserve, how we plan for more of these homes. Today, we will hear from an esteemed panel representing state government and the entities that will be responsible for awarding the federal dollars into sustainable housing. Details are still being worked out. So this is like we had a forum a few months ago announcing that we were applying for it. Now this is a forum telling us where things are at. And then we'll have another forum that will be the funds are ready to go. Here's how you apply. For now, I'd like to turn it over to Jonathan Schrag. Did I say that correctly? Deputy Chief of Climate and Director of Investment for Decarbonization and Resilience at the Office of, let me get the title right. Deputy Chief of Climate and Director of Investment for Decarbonization and Resilience at the Office of Climate Innovation and Resilience. It is a mouthful, but it's an awesome that we have this office. You can read more about Jonathan in the materials that we handed out. For now, please give a warm welcome to Jonathan.
Thank you, everyone. Pleasure to be here. On behalf of Governor Healy and Governor Driscoll, I'm really excited to have this event, and for CHAPA for organizing it. I'll try to look to my left and my right. It's kind of a wide range of what's going on here. And to Nixon Peabody for organizing this event. You know, the fact that we are here together with energy and housing is itself, I think, a milestone. We are here to talk about how we can preserve affordable housing, expand it, and meet the Commonwealth's clean energy and climate goals with this amazing federal opportunity that we have in the Greenhouse Gas Reduction Fund. I just want to make a few quick points to open up the conversation and then turn it over. We have this amazing panel of, as Rachel said, super smart people, and Undersecretary Steitley here to help moderate us. We sometimes get a little rowdy on the panel and might need a little moderation. But this opportunity to invest in clean energy from the Biden administration is really unprecedented. And it includes a number of different threads that we should keep clear. The most important is the Greenhouse Gas Reduction Fund, the largest single federal investment in climate ever. That consists of 3 distinct programs. It is the National Clean Investment Fund, which is a $14 billion fund. There is the Clean Communities Investment Accelerator, which is a $7 billion fund. And then there is Solar for All. So $6 billion is CCIA and $7 billion is Solar for All. The billions become so large when we track. Those are national numbers. And the Solar for All money is the one that will come directly to the Commonwealth of Massachusetts. It will come to Kelsey, and we'll get to hear all about it. Massachusetts was ecstatic to receive $156 million. But these are all distinct threads. They combine with her and here applying rebates. They combine with new tax credits that are newly eligible for nonprofit entities through the direct pay provisions of the Inflation Reduction Act. They combine with our existing state programs of Mass Save. So how we weave these things together is really a critical question. So I think one thing you're going to hear today is that housing and climate are interconnected. This meeting is itself a milestone and it's coming together of two different communities. You know, we can think about that as two distinct languages, as two communities. We can also think about it as the Healy administration's commitment to an all-of-government approach to climate. How are we doing that? We created the Climate Bank at Mass Housing. The Affordable Homes Act includes significant measures for decarbonization. The creation of an undersecretary for climate and strategy sitting here with us, which is itself a recognition of how intersectional climate is. The report in October of 2023 issued by Climate Chief Melissa Hoffer, my boss, which includes a number of follow-on processes related to housing. Amy is leading a whole work stream related to affordable housing decarbonization, and then just systemic regular interaction between our Department of Energy Resources and housing and livable communities and mass housing, as well as the other housing quasis, in a way that may not have occurred in previous administrations, to ensure that all of the routine processes of government are taking climate and housing into effect at the same time. We know that solving the housing crisis and the climate crisis depend on each other. We can think perhaps of a third leg of the stool, transportation as well, that each of those will feed each other for a sustainable and comprehensive solution. You know, even with this Biden administration's incredibly unprecedented investment in climate, it still represents perhaps 10 to 20% of the total investment that will be needed for decarbonization. So we are going to need to braid these monies together. And we're going to have to do that with an understanding of how projects are financed. So when we say that housing and climate are interconnected, we mean that the solutions are going to have to take advantage of conventional resources within each community. So climate and energy experts are going to need to learn the language of LIHTC. We're going to need to learn about QAPs. And housing experts, many people in this room, are going to need to learn about methane. They're going to need to learn about Mass Save. They're going to need to learn about investment tax credits for clean energy. And we're going to have to understand how each of those programs and incentives can play nicely with each other in the capital stack and around the deal table to get deals done. And an awareness, all of this has to be done with an awareness, and I think this is crucial for this administration, that the particular business model of each asset we are trying to decarbonize really matters. Whether it's hospitals or schools or affordable housing, each asset class has its own ecosystem, its own business model, its way of financing, its timelines, and we want the clean energy dollars from the Greenhouse Gas Reduction Fund, from Mass Save, to go with the grain and leverage those processes and not be sprinkled or orthogonal to those processes. So there's a lot of learning to be done. Let me add that both housing and climate also deeply affect the well-being of our citizens, in particular citizens that have been historically disadvantaged, what we call in statute environmental justice populations. So clearly available affordable housing is a bread and butter issue for our citizens, but we can also think about energy burden as a bread and butter issue. For people in the energy space, most of us heat our homes with natural gas. Natural gas is distributed through pipelines. As those of us who are able to pay for electrification come off of the gas system, we leave the routine payment of those pipes to those who are not able to afford it, electrification. So they end up sharing a larger and larger burden of maintaining those pipes. So over time, there is a negative cycle of the gas system causing greater energy burden on low-income customers, while those who are more wealthy are able to install heat pumps. It doesn't work that way with electric cars. When you buy an electric car, you don't cause the person driving an internal combustion engine to pay a greater cost. The pipelines are the things that make it different. So we need to think about how housing and electrification can be a proactive step to addressing those energy burden issues. You know, we are really well positioned in Massachusetts to take advantage of these monies. We've got these experts here. We've got all of the experts in the room. We have robust ecosystems around energy and around housing. And I think these kinds of meetings and the partnership that CHAPA has is what's going to allow us to design the programs, make sure that contractors aren't bumping into each other in the hallways, and that we're able to build the business models and get the deals done. So I'm super excited to listen today because we've got super smart people. And to start us off, I'll introduce Undersecretary Amy Stitley of the Secretary of Housing and Livable Communities. Thank you.
Good morning, everyone. Since I last saw you in October, I've had a title change. So it's nice to see you. And in that short period of time between October now, I have made so many terrific friends, including Jonathan and the wonderful panel here to support housing and livable communities and its decarbonization and climate resilience efforts. Before we dive into this excellent panel, I would not be doing my job if I didn't talk about the first statewide housing plan and the listening sessions that are happening now through June 5th. Over the next 3 weeks, please come to one everywhere from Pittsfield to the Cape. It's a very exciting opportunity. And if you go on CHAPA's website, you can click and see how you can participate, because it's not only about climate, it's also about housing. Together they go. All right, so I'm just going to introduce the panel members and tell you a little about them. There is a scan me thing if you would like their extended bios, so that we know who we're going to hear from today, although I believe many of them are familiar to you. So first, we're going to hear from Maggie Superchurch, who is a national leader in affordable housing and climate finance, and the first hire of the Massachusetts Community Climate Bank, which is being incubated by Mass Housing. And many of you know her from a long history of other work in Massachusetts. Second, Kelsey Reed, as Jonathan explained, who I know as the solar pusher in the state. So any moment there's a solar opportunity, I hear from Kelsey. Are you on top of this? And thank goodness, because he was the quarterback, the rallier, the person who got all of us together, whether it was the Boston Housing Authority, the Clean Energy Center, Mass Housing, Housing and Livable Communities, got all the band together and figure out how we were going to implement this solar for all thing that he's going to talk more about. Then Ben Silverman, who will talk about the Department of Energy Resources' latest actions and programs. You might know of them as the Mass Save people, but there's so much more happening besides Mass Save. So let's hear a lot about that. They're increasingly participating in the affordable housing space in new ways, thanks to the new resources that are available at the state and the federal level. And then lastly, Emily Jones, the Deputy Director of LIST, in case you missed that announcement. Congratulations, Liz Boston, who's been a partner and a convener for everyone working in the green affordable housing space for quite some time. She's going to close it out and give some tangible sort of what next, how can we get involved? So without further ado, let's bring up Maggie.
Well, we're getting the slides teed up. First of all, I want to say thank you to CHAPA and to Nixon Peabody for hosting us. Really exciting to be in the room and to know that so many people are engaged, excited, and want to really dig into this topic. The first thing I'll say, which is sort of a preamble and maybe a bit of humor to lighten what is going to be a very content-rich conversation, is the acronyms. We spent a lot of time leading into this conversation, debating whether we should provide a whole glossary of acronyms. And for those of us who've been trying to cross worlds between housing and climate and health and lots of other things for a while, we know many acronyms pop up in different settings, and the same acronym can mean different things to different people. So my favorite recent example was in a meeting with a group of, I think, DOER and other energy experts who kept referring to AMI, and coming from housing, why are we talking about AMI in the context of grid modernization? But I'm gonna stay with it. No, it was advanced metering infrastructure. Folks like that's obvious. So, so we have attempted in this presentation to try to spell out the acronyms for you, and you'll have access to the slides afterward. But apologies in advance if we just start like throwing acronyms around, because there are a lot of them in this new world of federal funding, and a lot to go. So presentation. With that, I will attempt to start with my own first acronym, the MCCD slide. Okay. That's it. First thing we're going to do. So I want to just briefly start by introducing the Massachusetts Community Climate Bank, for those who may not know us, because we are relatively new to the scene, although mass housing and the work that we're doing is certainly not new. The Climate Bank was announced by Governor Healy last June as a way to really think about adding to the kind of skills and resources and opportunities we have to address the state's clean energy and climate goals, but particularly to bring that together with the state's affordable housing production and preservation goals. We're proud that the Climate Bank is the first so-called green bank in the country to really launch with an explicit focus on affordable housing. And that has turned out to be an important part of what the Biden administration has also prioritized through these greenhouse gas reduction funds and other resources that we're going to be talking about today. So it is one part of a big, complex, exciting system that's still learning how to work together. As Jonathan mentioned, housing and climate are all working on the same kinds of issues in the building sector, but learning each other's languages and ways of working. And the Climate Bank is very much part of that. So we're really set up to invest public and private resources to help advance the state's clean energy and climate goals. The building sector is a focus. Within that, affordable housing is an explicit focus. And so we're looking at both multifamily rental housing and homeownership housing for low and moderate income people as two kind of initial lanes that we'll be working in. So we'll say more about that, but just wanted to make sure everybody knows what our first acronym is, the MCCD. And as I mentioned, the focus really is affordable housing, particularly in the next 3 to 5 years. I would encourage anybody who's interested in learning more to visit our website, massclimatebank.com, which has our strategic and operating plan, notes from a roundtable we hosted last fall, and other resources that may be of interest if you'd like to learn more about what the Climate Bank is like too. And we've been working closely with our colleagues on this panel and with the Climate Office and HLC and others to really think about how we can maximize the number of resources and the kind of quality of resources flowing into Massachusetts through this kind of historic federal investment. So I'm going to just recap a bit of kind of what the Greenhouse Gas Reduction Fund, fondly known as the GGRF, is. And Jonathan alluded to this, but just to kind of give people a quick sense of the three parts. I'm going to speak to the first two. Kelsey will speak to Solar for All. But there are these three strands of funding within the larger GGRF kind of pot. These have now been awarded, and so we know who the recipients are. We'll share more about that. The National Clean Investment Fund, which is the largest pot, $14 billion, is really meant to be principally lending dollars into communities, and I'll tell you a little bit more about some of those priority areas. And the focus continues to be on low and moderate income people and communities. A minimum of 40% of those funds need to flow in that direction. I think the awardees, in many cases, do more than that. And so this is really so-called direct investment. So again, low cost, sort of more concessionary, longer term, lending capital that can be provided to advance a variety of priorities. The second is the Clean Communities Investment Accelerator. And again, this is a set of awards that were made to national coalition partners that will then provide dollars into communities through community lenders. There's more flexibility about these funds being awarded as TA and grant dollars in addition to lending capital. And so again, we'll share more about sort of who those awardees are. The third, Solar for All, Kelsey will speak to. That's the one that we actually know how much Massachusetts is getting. The first two were sort of in this interesting in between where the national awards have been made, and we need to work to bring some of that national funding into Massachusetts. So just as a reminder for those who may not have spent a lot of time on this, there are 3 priority project categories within the broader fund. The central one, net zero emissions buildings, is the one that we've been very focused on as the intersection of housing and climate. And so this is really looking at preservation of existing housing, making it less reliant on fossil fuels, moving toward clean energy, and to some degree new construction, but really a lot of the work we have to do in the Commonwealth and elsewhere is retrofits, because we know 80% of the buildings we will have in 2050 we have today. And often the costs and the complexity of retrofitting buildings presents a different set of challenges in construction. The other 2 categories which are relevant to the broader set of awards include distributed energy generation and storage. And again, you'll hear more about that in the Solar for All description. And as Jonathan mentioned, transportation is another key priority. So all these national coalition partners have their different combinations of priority projects and lending strategies related to one or more of these key areas. I will say we were very pleased when the announcements came out in April to note that there was a very strong focus on housing and the way those awards were structured and who the awardees are, certainly not exclusively housing, but a very strong signal that housing is a priority for the administration in thinking about how we approach decarbonization and environmental justice. So just to provide a quick kind of overview of where the funds are going. So there were 3 awardees under the National Clean Investment Fund. Again, remember, these are largely lending dollars. The first is Climate United, which received the largest award, close to $7 billion. And this is a nonprofit that was formed for purposes of this competition. It's a partnership between groups that many of you will know, Self-Help Ventures Fund, the Community Preservation Corporation. And so they have been working to think about how they can kind of use these dollars again to invest in the 3 priority project areas with, I think, strong focus on housing as one part of that. The Coalition for Green Capital, which received a $5 billion award, is really a group that has represented the green banks around the country, some of them smaller and more nascent, some of them are established like Connecticut and New York. And so they also have a different mix, a different focus in terms of housing versus transportation versus clean energy. And so those awards, again, will be used to support green banks of various sizes and in various project types over the coming years. And then the third award, which we'll hear a little bit more about from Emily Jones as well, is the Power Forward Communities Coalition, which received $2 billion. And this is a partnership between Enterprise, LISC, Rewiring America, Habitat for Humanity, and United Way. Again, coalitions are figuring out, given that they all got awards that were a bit different than what they asked for, how to organize that funding and then begin to put it out. So that's the NCIF awardees. The Clean Communities Investment Accelerator, there were 5 national awards. Again, many of these will be familiar names to many of you. So Opportunity Finance Network, Inclusive Justice Climate Fund, which was created for purposes of competing for this award. Again, a partnership of a number of different national organizations. Appalachian Community Capital and the Native CDFI Network. And so again, these are more flexible funds. The general rule is they can be provided to more local lenders with a max of 10 million with some exceptions. And there's flexibility for TA and other uses in addition to loan dollars. So you can sort of see the attempt here was to try to provide funding streams that can work at different scales in different parts of the country for different project types, bigger lenders, smaller lenders. And so our job collectively will be, as we learn more about what these awardees are doing, to match that with projects in Massachusetts and make sure we can take advantage of these funding opportunities. So a quick overview of timeline and next steps. The selected applicants are working with EPA on their contracts. We understand the work plans were due last Friday, so there's more to know as the details of those work plans are shared. There's a statutory deadline of September 30th to obligate the funds from EPA to the national awardees, although they have an intent to be under contract by July 1st. At which point the entities that received those awards, which I just discussed briefly, will begin working to deploy those funds again with community lenders into projects around the country. So the performance period, we think will begin July 1st. Again, if the contracts with EPA are delayed, that could push later into the summer. And then the key really is to think about moving resources into so-called qualified projects. And I've just listed here sort of the key criteria. So 6-part definition: reduce emissions, reduce other air pollutants, deliver benefits to communities, demonstrate that they would not otherwise have been financed, mobilize private capital, and support only commercial technologies. So these are the things that these awardees will be broadly looking at, regardless of whether they're, it's a housing project or transportation, clean energy project. So we at the Climate Bank have been and will continue to work with our other partners in state government and elsewhere to find opportunities that are well matched for each of these funds. And that work will continue for several years. The performance period ends at the end of September 2031. So that is a very fast run through what is a very large, complicated set of funding awards. But we have provided some places where you can go to find more information. So EPA has a nice FAQ available for those who would like to read more about the awardees or the funding criteria. And then I've listed resources, web, social, et cetera, for the Climate Bank. And we will continue to post new information as it becomes available. And we know more about what's happening with each of these funds. So exciting times, lots we know, lots we don't know yet, but excited to share what we do know. And with that, I'll pass it on to Kelsey. Thank you.
Good morning, everybody. So really excited to be here and talk a bit about Solar for All, which, as noted, is one of those 3 buckets, and it's the one that Massachusetts was able to apply for directly as a state, and it's the one that we were just awarded and know an amount, $156 million that we found out late in April. Just briefly, as a quick intro to who Mass CEC, or the Mass Clean Energy Center, is. We're the economic development agency for the clean energy industry in Massachusetts. We do that across a whole range of different programming initiatives, but that includes programming that's kind of focused on the adoption of clean energy technologies and scaling that across the Commonwealth. So Massachusetts received $156 million. I'm going to say that multiple times. We work really closely with Department of Energy Resources, colleagues at Mass Housing, colleagues at Boston Housing Authority, and a bunch of stakeholders who, many of you are here in the room, developing that application last summer and fall and submitted in October. And really put a lot of effort into the stakeholder work that went into that to try and make sure the programming we're proposing to EPA and therefore the programming we're going to get to run was really thoughtful. And excited to say that EPA seemed to agree and was able to deliver us strongly. So I'm going to kind of just give a quick highlight on the kind of multifamily affordable piece and focus on that given the audience, but just to touch on it, we also have programming proposed across the kind of small residential space, options for both owning and leasing systems, focus on community shared solar, so options where on-site solar solutions aren't a viable option, and enabling community solar projects that can really deliver deeper benefits to residents. A focus on multifamily affordable housing, both public and private affordable housing projects. A whole suite of kind of corresponding technical assistance, engagement and outreach programming, workforce development programming, funding for enabling upgrades, which are some of those pieces you might need on a lot of properties in order to make solar work. And we're also carving some out for assignable funding. I didn't put dollar amounts on these categories yet because we're still in the process of adjusting from our original application proposal down to the 156 that we were awarded, and so making sure we align those buckets. But we feel very confident that across all these sectors, we're going to continue to fund significant programming. And so I'm going to dive in a little bit just what the multifamily approach looks like. We had a lot of great stakeholder discussions around this in terms of what are the challenges for kind of on-site solar solutions at affordable housing properties? And as you can imagine, it's complex and varied in terms of what those challenges are, but thankfully we really have a fair bit of experience tackling those in Massachusetts. And there was a lot of great stakeholder work and project work that many of you in this room had done that really helped inform what the barriers and challenges were and how we can really scale and grow this sector. And so through that, we kind of have two components, public focused effort and a private multifamily focused effort. And within both of those, you're going to see a real parallel there. Options for direct ownership of solar and options for third party ownership of solar. The idea with kind of keeping all of these included, developed through that stakeholder engagement was different owners, different property developers are all going to have different needs and constraints on their properties. And we want to find solutions that can enable solar in all of those cases. There's no need for us to kind of cut one out. What we care about is delivering an impact to the residents, to the tenants. We want to meet those core goals that Jonathan was mentioning earlier, to reducing energy burden, setting these properties up for long-term success in terms of our climate goals. So on the public side, we're working really closely with Boston Housing Authority to help us reach not just their properties, but reach public housing authorities across the Commonwealth. Looking at how we can kind of centralize some of the design and installation processes so that procurement is an individual challenge at every small housing authority across the Commonwealth, but we can help streamline that. Making sure we find pathways for delivering the 20% savings that is a requirement of the program to the tenants, recognizing that's a complicated ecosystem to do so in master meter buildings, non-master meter buildings, et cetera. So working through, HUD has a fair bit of guidance on that and really trying to make sure we help develop pathways to simplify that process for housing authorities who are looking to install solar. And then in terms of what our funding is going to be focused on there, it's funding the kind of upfront costs to help cover timing gaps, particularly with the new tax credits that are available, and then pair that with grants to help ensure we can deliver those savings levels. And then on the third party ownership side, that third party owner is covering that funding timing gap issue. We're going to be looking at the grants that can ensure that savings impact. And then on the private multifamily side, a very parallel kind of structure to it, but working really closely with Mass Housing and the Climate Bank team. Again, really focused on that, delivering that targeted savings to all the residents of these buildings. A core kind of focus here is targeting our incentive levels to specific projects. Any individual multifamily project is going to look very different based off of the size of system that they can fit and the number of tenants and many other factors. And we want to be setting our incentives levels in a way that can ensure that savings can be really clear to the developers of the projects and the other involved parties so that they can go forth and finance it. But that is also as efficient with our dollars as we can be so that we're getting as many people as we can. And again, kind of a variation of approaches for the direct ownership versus the third party ownership of those solar, giving as many options as we can out to these properties. So in terms of kind of other elements, technical assistance to help support building owners navigate this process is going to obviously be a key piece of this, helping them make that decision between third party ownership and direct ownership. That's not necessarily simple, and it's very dependent on each individual property, wanting to make sure we can have resources to explore those options. Some funding available for enabling upgrades to ensure that we can, resolve issues where solar could be a great fit, but there's a particular barrier. And kind of making sure that funding formula is clear and published so that all the players can have a lot of insight to it. So in terms of next steps, we're currently in process. Our colleagues at the Department of Energy Resources, who are the lead applicant on behalf of the state, are contracting with EPA over the kind of course of this summer into the fall. We're going to be refining the program design over that kind of same parallel period. So there will be a lot of opportunities for more stakeholder engagement as we put out further details about these program concepts and look to make sure we're setting these programs up in a really thoughtful and impactful way. And then the idea is that the funding opportunities will start to become available kind of late fall into 2025. So for anyone looking for kind of more details, there's links in the presentation on the DOER's website about what we applied for. There's an email list that everyone can sign up for where we'll be publishing information as these stakeholder opportunities roll out, as programming rolls out. And then we can also always take specific questions at the resource tool. That's about it. Thanks, everybody.
Thank you. Hello, everyone. I'm Ben Silman. I'm with the Department of Energy Resources, or DOER. DOER is the Massachusetts State Energy Office. We do a lot of work on building codes. We do work on offshore wind, grid resiliency, energy efficiency in the Mass Safety Program, and ever increasingly decarbonization and climate action at large. It's really exciting time to be with DOER. We have a lot of resources thanks to the leadership from the Healy-Driscoll administration, as well as funds from the Biden administration and federal funding. And it's so exciting that I'm going to, and changing so rapidly, I'm going to be speaking a lot in terms of proposals, plans, and possibilities, as everything's kind of in motion in flux at the moment. So much so that, after today or after the end of this, I'm going to go back to the office and work on the proposals for a number of the things I'm going to be talking about. So that's how active these things are. So I'm going to be a little hedging and not going into as much detail as we hope to be able to give in the next few weeks and months, but hopefully this will give you a picture of some of the things that we're working on. And to that end, I'm going to be talking about three main efforts that we're working on, specifically the Inflation Reduction Act, or IRA, rebate funds, the affordable housing decarbonization grant work, and some technical assistance that we aim to be providing for affordable housing decarbonization work. All three of these things are we're planning to be very intermixed, and we'll rely on each other and moving back and forth. So we're going to be talking sort of back and forth between them, but it's all kind of part of the same sort of plan of how we can be using state and federal funds to help decarbonize our affordable housing and help so that the benefits of these types of technologies are going to low and moderate income residents first and foremost. To begin with, I want to just talk about the Inflation Reduction Act and two specific funding sources: the Home Efficiency Rebates, or HER, previously called HOMES, and the Home Electrification Appliance Rebates, or HERE, previously called HERA. I'll also note that DOE doesn't call them that either. They refer to them as 11512 and 115. It's great, but it's not confusing at all. But this is actually really exciting because it's about $146 million worth of funding for energy efficiency and electrification work specifically. And we're conceptualizing splitting up these two buckets of funding into three chunks. One chunk, about $22 million, will be going to municipal light plants, which are communities across the Commonwealth that are unplugged into the Mass Save program. So making sure that funds are going to people or residents who don't normally get access to the same sort of rebates folks in like Boston and Somerville get. $50 million is going to go towards affordable housing decarbonization, which I'll talk more about in a second. And the remaining $72 million will be going to help augment and enhance the existing Mass Save low and moderate income offerings. In terms of HER, the efficiency rebates, they're structured in ways in which to provide funding on a per unit basis, depending on the level of energy efficiency being done. So for low moderate income residents or below 80% AMI, that could go to about $4,000 to $8,000 per unit, depending on the level of efficiency, so 20 or 35%. We aim to be proposing to the Department of Energy, who's overseeing these funds, just increasing that amount of funds on a per unit basis to up to 20 grand per unit for really deep energy retrofit work. And with the idea of using these funds to really help energize the types of deep energy retrofits and decarbonization that we want to see. Specifically, our Affordable Housing Decarbonization Grant Program. This was launched last year. Last year with $50 million of grant funding for affordable housing decarbonization. To date, we've awarded about $27 million of that for 700 units and 10 deep energy retrofit projects across the Commonwealth. These have involved, full exterior cladding installation, cellulose installation, work on air source heat pump retrofits, ground source heat pumps and geothermal wells, solar installation. A lot of different really exciting measures are being funded by this work. And right now we're in the final phases of reviewing the second tranche, or second cohort of funding, with hopefully an announcement on that coming the next coming weeks of the projects we're moving forward with. In all, we're probably going to end up funding decarbonization work for nearly 1,500 units. So these are 1,500 affordable housing units that are going to be preserved and decarbonized thanks in part to these funding sources. And we're also going to be looking for opportunities to expand out this program for additional rounds. Timelines to be determined, but likely the HERB funding that will be one source of funding to help extend out these offerings to more projects in the future. One of the lessons that we learned from the first round of the decarbonization grant is that there are a number of projects out there where project teams are really excited, they want to do the right thing, but they're lacking in certain technical knowledge. They need design staff, they need consultants with experience in types of deep energy retrofits that we're looking to help fund. And knowledge of that gap of those projects that want to do the right thing, but just don't have the in-house technical expertise to do so, has led us to look to provide about $3.5 million in funding for technical assistance on design consultants and deep energy retrofit consultants. That is also in the works right now. We're in the final phase of contract negotiation, but we're hopefully going to be announcing that opportunity in the next few weeks or months. Think fall. But this will be, a great resource for many folks in the room to help fill those sorts of technical assistance and design construction gaps that exist when looking to fully decarbonize an affordable housing building. And lastly, just to speak briefly on the HERE side of things, this is, a lot of the HERB related funding. I know I keep falling back on these. I live in this world too much, but the $50 million worth of the energy efficiency rebates are going to go towards affordable housing decarbonization specifically, but also there'll be funding made available for lower and moderate income projects and residents through the electrification rebate program. And that's being handled through specifically augmenting and enhancing mass save. Our proposal is to use these funds in areas where we know that mass save dollars, at least are either not covering as much as we want, or there's such a high amount of demand in these locations that's not reaching the full breadth of the opportunity there. So these funds will be helped to be staffed with existing mass save funding for things such as heat pumps, but also panel upgrades, electrical upgrades, and other sorts of resources to expand out mass saves, liens, and other low and moderate income offerings in the electrification space. So once again, that's still in the works, and we're hopefully going to be putting in our proposal for the Inflation Reduction Act in the next few hours now, but in the very near future, and with a aim to launch it sometime near the tail end of this year, maybe in Q4. But a lot of money we're hopefully going to be moving out there, and a lot of really exciting work on decarbonization. So I hope to get to know and work alongside many of the folks in this room on this. Thank you.
And it's Lisk, Massachusetts. It's Boston. Okay, very good.
Thank you. Great. So yes, as Amy said, we're really excited about Lisk, Massachusetts. We have really been a statewide organization for our green homes and work in the last 15 years. So we're really excited for that name change. So again, I'm Emily Jones with Lisk, Massachusetts, and we'll talk today a little bit about what we know of our National Clean Investment Fund award, and then really how folks can prepare to take advantage of all of this funding that's coming down the pipe. So first off, I just want to center us in what the goal is for, I think, our affordable housing sector as a whole. So we really want to make sure that there are adequate resources for high performance, low carbon new construction, and then for retrofitting all of our existing buildings to be net zero ready by 2050. So obviously these are the resources that we've been talking about today will definitely get us there. I think Jonathan mentioned that we're going to need more money to do all of that work, but this really lays the foundation for folks to get off and running. And just as a component of that, we know that there needs to be more equitable electricity rates for both low and moderate income residents, and then for affordable housing owners as well, so that the energy burden is not increased as we transition. And then, of course, we know all of you are thinking about the green workforce development opportunities that are connected to these jobs, and the Commonwealth and the agencies here are all very committed to advancing good paying green jobs. So as Maggie mentioned, LISC is excited to be one of the National Clean Investment Fund awardees. So that was a $2 billion award, and LISC nationally expects to get about 570 million of that. So LISC has 38 local offices. We definitely want to be seen, and I think we will be seen as a priority office. So just given the amount of work that that we've supported in terms of equitable building decarbonization that all of you have been doing over the past many years. So we're keeping our fingers crossed. We'll certainly let folks know as we get details of that. And then again, as I think Maggie mentioned, at least 75% of the LISC money will be going to low income and disadvantaged communities, including affordable housing. So we have a very high commitment to that. Just a breakdown of it, we think that 85% of it will be for financial assistance. So this is going to be for products like construction loans, for high performance, for basically net zero new construction buildings, and then perm loans for energy efficiency and rehab projects, and then contractor lines of credit for contractors as well. So these are some of the things that we're thinking about. That's 85% we expect to go to the financial assistance. 5% we think will go to market building. So this is nationally LISC, and our partners will have a technical assistance platform and related resources that folks can take advantage of. We also expect to have a green workforce development support there at the national level. And then 5% we hope will go to pre-development assistance. So this can be these early stage recoverable grants and other support for things like the building decarbonization assessment. So stay tuned on the details again, but that's what we expect. And again, I don't know if this was raised, but we do expect that both Davis-Bacon and Buy America, Build America requirements will be connected with this funding source. So I think that's the main thing that. So how can you get ready? Okay, so I know that a lot of you are already taking steps in your across your portfolio to really prepare. So that is great. And we really encourage folks to just keep on doing what you're doing and take advantage of all the available resources. So on the new construction side, we are encouraging you to plan, as to the extent that it's feasible, to really plan passive house new construction, all electric building systems, where feasible, and building with a specialized code in mind. This is going, and then of course, if you can maximize on-site clean energy systems, enterprise green community certification, and thinking about low embodied carbon material usage is really kind of the coming thing that we need to have our eyes on. All of these things are going to help you really position your projects to be net zero ready and 2050 ready, and obviously maximize all of these, the resources for which you're eligible. So on your existing portfolio, really trying to think about what are the opportunities, where do you have where are your energy hogs, right? Starting with reviewing your portfolio. Many of you know through benchmarking which properties are your most energy intensive ones, and then overlaying that with when you are approaching your next refinancing and planned rehab. So really that allows you to leverage whatever your planned scope of work is to achieve deeper decarbonization savings. And then, of course, many of you have probably participated in our Solar Star portfolio-wide solar analyses. If you haven't, make sure you're taking a look for solar, and you'll be able to really maximize the Solar for All and related incentives when they come available later this year. So LIST does have what we call our Decarb Hub, and that just lists building science partners that can offer building decarbonization assessments and related technical expertise. We're very excited about, as Ben mentioned, the DOER's, their Affordable Housing Decarb Technical Assistance hub, that resource that will be available later this year, where we expect that much of that will be institutionalized and there will be additional funding support for building decarbonization assessments and related design grants. And then what can you apply to now, and then what's on the horizon? Obviously, we've talked about many of these things, but I just want to emphasize that the Mass Saves Income Eligible Deep Energy Retrofit Program, which is run by LEAN, that's a resource that everyone should be thinking about trying to take full advantage of. It requires at least 40% on-site energy savings, but it unlocks $350 per MMBTU. So that could be $16,000 per unit, it could be $25,000 per unit, depending on how deep you're going. So get in the queue. There's a process. They want to hear about your projects early. So I just highly encourage folks to apply ASAP. HUD, the Green and Resilient Retrofit Program, if you do have an eligible project, a HUD eligible project, that they do have, the final deadline is going to be July 31st. So that may be an opportunity for some of you. And then again, we just spoke to the DOER's, their Affordable Housing Decarb, the grant program that hopefully will be re-upped with another potentially 50 million of the HER rebate. Yeah, we'll get the details on that later this year, likely. Obviously, these greenhouse gas reduction funds from the different buckets as those become finalized. And then lastly, the Climate Ready Housing Program, that is the next round of that will be opening up next March, assuming that the Affordable Homes Act is passed in full. That is the funding source for it. And so be on the lookout for that. And again, doing all of these things, including building decarbonization assessments, scope of work creation, is really going to help you position your properties to be competitive for that. So please reach out. I think that's the end, but we're happy to, if you're not on our Green Homes listserv, we are happy to just email me and I will add you, and we'll share details as soon as we know more. So thank you.
So I want to thank all the panelists for being very comprehensive, but very timely in their remarks. Your head might be spinning around. I hear that we're sending out decks. So the deck was written for circulation. That's why there's so much text in it. So I'm gonna start off by saying, given that all of these programs, these funds are decentralized and there's not a single place to access any of it, how are you as partners going to facilitate the information flow that people need to understand how to access what programs, what financing mechanisms when, given that they're coming out at different times, through different agencies, through different organizations, some we don't even know yet. So who wants to take that question first? Maggie. Volleyball.
Okay. Thanks. Yeah, no, this is the sort of amazing and very challenging moment we're in because there's a lot to think through and coordinate. Can folks hear me? I think this is on.
Yep. Yeah, we can hear you.
Sure. I would say sort of big picture, we all, you know, on this panel and others in the room are talking almost daily, if not weekly at this point, about these sources and how they work together at the kind of project and portfolio level. Both in terms of program design so that we can be sure we don't show up with a new resource that looks great, but actually really doesn't work with the other resources somebody has, and that creates a 6-month delay and all kinds of other problems. So to the extent that we have collectively any ability to shape, you know, how these funds actually sit, you know, in a project, we want to be sure to do that and take some of the pain out of the process for developers, owners, operators who are trying to navigate, you know, all of this. And I would say similarly, just as a more recent example, on the single family homeowner side, we know that for a homeowner, this can be even, if imaginable, more overwhelming than a multifamily developer because it's not something people are thinking about all day long. So the Climate Bank recently announced a new energy saving home loan program that was designed in part to align a lot of these resources sort of ahead of the announcement. So the requirements for energy saving calculations align with what Ben and his team are working on through the home energy rebates, for example. We've designed a bridge period for the loan so that people who are applying for federal tax credits aren't going out of pocket and waiting for those benefits to come back. So we've really been trying to think about all the ways that the program design, both for homeowners and also for affordable housing owners operators can work together. So we want to make this as simple as possible for all of you, recognizing there's a lot of complexity and some things that we don't know yet. But the idea is no wrong door. So if you call Ben or you call Kelsey or you call me or you call Amy, we're going to point you in the right direction and you'll get what you need to advance your particular project, which may be different than something else.
Thank you. Anyone else want to add to that? Go ahead.
I'll just add that we try to keep our decarb hub updated with all the available sources, and then we hope that that will be institutionalized by DOER's technical assistant later this year.
TBD. No, but it is a real concern, and it is definitely going to be part of we're imagining that it will be part of the scope of work for that technical assistance. We'll be doing some of the hand-holding needed to point projects in the right direction to available resources. I think we might, you know, in the future, we might be in a situation where there's multiple one-stop shops where that becomes a little, you know, almost duplicative. But I think as Maggie and Emily noted, we all working together, and there's a single, well, different organization, there's one team and one focus here.
And Kelsey, I think you wanted to get in, yeah.
Yeah, I think the piece I was gonna add is maybe what Ben just talked about, but which is the technical assistance piece. I think we recognize that for a property owner, these projects and the way you approach it is complex, and there's a need for that one-on-one assistance. And the idea will really be that technical assistance available under Solar for All is aware of and understanding of the other programming and other options that are out there and can help you navigate through those, and I think vice versa. So ensuring that when you start engaging with that kind of technical assistance provider, they can really help you navigate that at an individual project level, which is where you really need that guidance.
Okay, I'm going to do one more question and then open it up. So this can even be for you, Jonathan. So what is the EPA funding, or I guess the IRA funding, doing that is different than what you've been doing to date? Like what opportunities is it creating that have never been before? What's special about this moment? Because as we know, Massachusetts is a leader already. We have this very robust Mass Save program. It's going to get even more robust if you read the draft 3-year plans, which I'm sure you all do. So what is the big deal about the national fund? Like what is getting unlocked that has not been unlocked before? Anyone? Or how does it help you go further than you have in the past?
I'll say that on one level, the funds, you know, the $146 million for the IRA funds isn't that substantial relative to the size of Mass Save, especially when we're looking at the next 3-year plan. But what they provide an opportunity for is for things such as the Affordable Housing Decarbonization Grant or funds to the municipal light plans, to kind of go beyond just Mass Save's own offerings and provide fundings in areas that we've identified there, maybe not gaps, but the areas for improvements and to expand on it, because DOE has a lot of rules and type regulations when it comes to the funds, which makes sense, but there is a level of flexibility there that has enabled us to be a little creative in our thinking.
Yeah, I think something really core for the Solar for All piece particularly is that it is 100% focused on expanding access and expanding impact of solar in low income and disadvantaged communities. We haven't had a pool of funding that was that targeted to work with previously. We've had elements of that type of programming in our other solar incentives, over the years, but having a pool that is solely focused on that is really impactful, and doing so alongside 60 other awardees across the country. There's a lot of national momentum and lessons and learnings and thinking going into it all that will be able to leverage and translate into more impact here.
Okay, yes, please come in.
Hi, thanks for that question, Amy. I would add a couple of things. First, there are some requirements that the federal government has put on these monies. Davis-Bacon is one, which is super important to ensure that there is prevailing wage flying to all construction projects. And we are in close partnership with our friends in labor around that and how to make that workable. Certainly when it applies to smaller assets like 1 to 4 family asset class, that's going to be a challenge. We'll need to think hard about aggregation and how to make that work, but that's a really important conversation for us to be having, both the climate community, the housing community, and the labor community. So the Biden administration has sort of taken their relatively modest, it's unprecedented, but modest amount of money and forced us to have that conversation to get through to the other side. That's one. Justice 40, I think, is another, ensuring that the benefits of these investments are accruing to, at least 40% of the benefits are accruing to environmental justice populations. I think you see a number of these old and established incumbent programs in New York and California and Massachusetts evolving to get to that space. But just because they're evolving and moving doesn't mean that the federal money didn't have a catalytic role in sort of pushing people to get there. That's the second one. And then third, I think that requiring the conversation around how these things are going to play together. So that it's not, Ben's program and Kelsey's program and Maggie's program, but there are meetings around, I've never heard the word capital stack used as many times, in the last year, as in the last year. And that, so for you guys, like you think about a project development in the context, there is a capital stack. For us, we don't really have capital stacks, we have programs. And we develop our programs without that much regard for each other or how they affect the capital stack. And for the Biden administration to say, no, you need to think about all of these layers. The fact that it is a national conversation, that RMI and Rewiring America and LISC and others are out there innovating in Michigan and Illinois, and that we get to sort of talk with those places and understand how they're approaching it. I think that also really creates better programs in Massachusetts. We need to be open to those learnings, and I think the evolution of the 3-year plan is a real positive. So
Thank you.
Yeah.
All right, it's 11:10, so I think we should open it up to the audience. All right, I saw your hand first. We have that. Oh, thank you. Well, sorry, who's first? Okay.
Thanks. Hi, Nick Bain with Related Beal. Just a follow-up on that Davis-Bacon point. So that sounds, from how you mentioned it, pretty holistic with all dollars allocated through through GGRF, even if subordinate, and funding a portion of the scope that is decarbonization related. I just wanted to clarify that point. It is meaningful. So is that definitive?
I think my understanding is that this is currently still a point of negotiation between US EPA and the three winners around program definition of whether Davis-Bacon will apply just to the greenhouse gas reduction fund dollars or to the entire project. And whether the project is the decarb piece or the entire, all the other work that's going on. Maggie, I don't know if you have more current information.
No, I would just say, as I mentioned earlier, we understood that work plans had to be completed and submitted to EPA last week, and we haven't heard further since then. The contracting process will go forward over the next few weeks, and we should learn a lot more at that point.
Okay, thank you.
Hi, everyone. My name is Isaac with Resonant Energy. I'll just add a brief to that point is that I've talked with a few other lenders and that there is some discussion about whether it will go the same way that the affordable housing community can sometime approach how Davis-Bacon fits into 4% LIHTC deals and whether it's funded during construction financing or perm. And a lot of that complexity, I think, is right now what's on the chopping block for how that's going to get worked out. My question is related to Kelsey to see if there's been any update around this small but very important detail that's going to affect how eligibility for all properties works for this funding, which is related to EPA's 20% reduction for energy costs for homes. And the question is 20% of what? And if we know yet.
Yeah, it's a great question, Isaac. They haven't been provided a ton of additional guidance yet, so we do expect more of that as we get into this kind of contracting phase. The way they phrased it in the opportunity is 20% of the average electricity bill in that service territory. So if you're in Eversource territory, average electricity bill for that territory, calculate that 20%, and that's the dollar value in savings we need to improve for all the units we're impacting with our funding. That's the kind of operating assumption that we're working on now. There is a lot of nuance, particularly as you get into multifamily, and a lot of states have wrestled with the idea that there's, by setting that limit, there are certain building types that just won't ever work. You can't put a 5 kilowatt system on a 100-unit building because you will never deliver enough savings. But that's not necessarily a project we don't want to fund or support. A lot of states have identified that. Nothing from EPA yet on whether there's a path to enabling that. But yeah, it's the average for the utility territory is the information we have right now, and trying to make that number as well.
You first.
Hi, Leah Whiteside from the Community Builders. Kelsey, I have a question for you on Solar for All. So I saw that, well, I'm wondering if you could clarify a little bit more about the rationale for where the grants versus loans are going. It seems a little bit backwards to me that the grants would be going to third-party providers, which I assume means, for-profit solar providers, as opposed to the nonprofit affordable owners who are trying to own solar so that we can derive the most benefit from it. And it is particularly hard, at least in all of the modeling TCP has done, to see where there might be incremental value to be able to afford debt service on any additional debt in our extensive capital stack. So yeah, could you talk more about that rationale?
Yeah, so, and sorry if this wasn't clear, but the grant component would be a part of both, essentially. So, and probably at a relatively similar level, there would be a grant component, both for the ownership approach and the third-party owned approach. The grant size at a level trying to ensure that the project can reach that 20% savings to its funds. Okay. And then the ownership approach also has in a financing component to help with the owner cover timing gaps, mostly from construction to incentives, particularly the tax credit, whereas that timing gap coverage isn't needed for the third-party owned approach. So the third-party owned is just seeing the grant portion. Whether they're sized and calculated identically, that needs some more stakeholder work and refinement and then modeling around, but they will be ballpark a very similar kind of grant approach that is solely focused on that delivering that savings impact.
And you mentioned that there will be working sessions with stakeholders. Do you know when those will be and how we find out about those?
Yeah, nothing scheduled yet, but certainly as we kind of develop the program manual and other kind of components for that, there'll be opportunities for kind of feedback on that and sessions for that. The link in the presentation to the DVR's email list, I can promise everything will go out there. There's also other stakeholder networks we will probably be letting CHAPA know when we are running something like that, and hoping they can share, you know, those stakeholder input opportunities with their members and things like that. But the email list on the DVR's website and when stakeholder related will get announced later.
Thanks.
Hi, I'm Tony Amento with Amento Architects. We're faced with putting together proposals for developers of both market rate and affordable housing. And oftentimes we're asked for a consultant to help the owner decide which programs and which incentives to utilize. The problem we're running against is there's not that many people out there that actually do this for a living, A, and B, if they do, the number that they're asking for is large. And I'm not sure it has to be, but it is. It's a big number. Oftentimes the clients are like, well, just forget about that energy stuff. We can't afford the fee for the consultant to help us get the incentive. The question is will any of the funding that you are all talking about be available to reimburse the cost of the consulting that the developer will need to pay for to help them get these incentives in the first place?
Sure. So I think how we've conceived the technical assistance we want to provide will be more of not necessarily reimbursement, but also providing funds to the consultants directly as like a suite of a couple of consultants working with our lead vendor on providing that services. So this might be an opportunity that could make sense for you, even if it's, but wouldn't necessarily be structured as a reimbursement, just to provide the services upfront. That's what the discussion is, possibly more, but this could be something that works well in your case.
Emily, did you want to add anything about consultants and CA?
Sure. So I'd say, yeah, we were aware that there's a growing need for this, and frankly, the building decarbonization assessment providers or building science consultants are at capacity. So they're hiring, but there's a queue. So yeah, we do list folks who can offer these services. When there are grants or support available for consultants, we list that on our Decarb Hub. I'd say the other area that folks should keep an eye on is the Built Environment Plus or BE Connects, their directory. They have a professional directory that architects, engineers, other professionals, design consultants can put their credentials on there. So if you are looking for folks, you can reach out and see who has the best price and who has the most expertise that you need. So those are some of but yes, I anticipate too that the National Clean Investment Fund will have some resources for that back end support in the pre-development or the pre-development assistance bucket.
Yeah, I was just gonna add, I think, based on what we've seen so far, we think those kinds of soft costs will be eligible for, rolling into like an NCIF loan, for example. Because the Clean Communities Investment Accelerator dollars are more flexible as to TA and granting and such, we hope that some of those funds could do some more of the pre-development and sort of upfront work to get projects ready. Again, a lot of that's going to be determined by how the National Coalition partners roll out their funds, but I think recognizing that's a real need in the marketplace is important, and thinking about how we can dedicate resources to get projects ready and not just capture the few that are already there.
I wanted to hone on just one thing you said before moving on. You said market rate, and so I just wanted to talk. What I think I heard in the presentation, if you can verify, is not 100% of the funds coming through greenhouse gas reduction funds are 100% are not reserved for low and moderate income disadvantaged communities. It is a large portion, but there is a portion for regular market rate. I'm just looking for confirmation from the folks.
Under NCIF.
Oh, okay.
CCIA is
100%. Okay, on the first bucket.
Yeah.
Okay, excellent.
Well, following up on the solar, Nina, on the the question about whether the solar is owned by the ownership, setting aside the third party, how do you, does it only work where, it's owner paid electricity? Or is there a way for these resources to work where there are tenant paid, electricity?
We're hopeful we can make it work for both. It does get complex because you, as I'm sure you are more aware than I am, but with utility allowances and things like that. So if you're trying to assign any of the physical energy credits from the system off to tenants, being really mindful of what that impact is. If you as the owner have the energy usage to utilize the energy generated by the system, that makes it a little easier because then we can use the overall savings from that to deliver that savings to the tenants still, but it would still be energy utilized by you as the owner. But there's going to be lots of nuanced cases in between that are challenging, but we hope that there are options, and part of what the technical assistance resource would help do and help a building owner assess that and kind of look into what those solutions could be. The EPA requirement is savings to the residents. So from that perspective, it's either it's finding some way that we can deliver that within guidelines, within utility allowance, ecosystems, et cetera. That works for a particular building scenario, but we hope to make it feasible, I guess, in both cases.
You mentioned that there will be synergy amongst the program definition at the state level, but do you also plan to work with the other awardees who are working at national level to define the program design requirements, whether it's net zero over time or net zero from day one?
Yeah, great question. So there are a couple of pieces to that. There is ongoing work to create a tighter definition for what the building standards will be that apply, sort of what is the line for zero over time versus net zero. So there will be more federal guidance there. I don't think we're going to see a push toward only net zero on day one. There's recognition that zero over time is going to have to be part of the solution because we can't get to net zero in every building right away. But exactly how those definitions work is still kind of being worked out at the federal level. That said, the national coalition partners are really trying to think about how they structure term sheets that really work with real projects. And so we've been in some of those conversations to say, if you're trying to put these loan dollars into a 4% deal or an 10% deal or a debt only deal, like what does that look like? How does it work? And so there is some back and forth on the very specific product design side with some of the coalition partners, but all those partners are going to be subject to whatever standards are ultimately set by EPA and their associated reporting requirements, which we're still going to hear more about.
Okay, so I'm going to read the room and think one more question and then kick it over to you to close if anybody wants to get in. All right. Thank you.
Can I just add one pitch?
Sure. Yes, please, come
on. I would just, I think I'd get in trouble if I didn't talk just for 2 minutes about direct pay and elective pay and tax credits. Are there non-taxable entities in the room or people who work with non-taxable entities who are developers? I'm going to assume that there are some. So the IRA creates the elective pay provision, also known as direct pay. It takes a whole set of existing tax credits for clean energy, the investment tax credit, the production tax credit, and then less relevant here, tax credits for electric vehicles. And it makes them eligible for non-taxable entities. So before you had to have a tax appetite, you had to be a for-profit entity. These tax credits can matter. Now what you do is you say if you're a hospital, if you're a low income or a nonprofit housing developer, if you're a city or if you're the state, you file a special form, a 990T. You say I owe zero tax. You fill out a form 3480, which says, here are all of the projects I've developed, the solar panels, the ground source heat pumps. You do a calculation, it's the investment tax credit. If you use prevailing wage, it is 30% of the value of the investment, and you get a cash refund. So a $5 million ground source heat pump, you're going to get 30% of that back. That's a super exciting process. And the deadline, if you do calendar year 2023, the deadline is November 15th. You have to do pre-registration in a portal. All of that information is available on a website at our federal funds and infrastructure office. So if there are folks that are interested in that, please look at that website, the federal funds infrastructure office. But direct pay is something that's super important. We're going to be doing some more outreach around that. But with this group, I just wanted to flag that. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, so everybody's clear, right? On what's coming? Okay, ready to go. First, can you please give a round of applause? There's a lot of work. We are all learning together. So this money is unprecedented, and you can see how hard these different state agencies and entities are working together to make this easier for everyone to use. So stay tuned, because we will be reconvening, and there will be another part of this series where we talk about, okay, now that all the details have been worked out, we know all the answers to the questions that people have. Here's what it looks like, here's how you apply. But we thought today was important to be kind of a midpoint, to understand how the money will be flowing, what it's going to start to look like, get those questions generated, so that everyone is ready when the funds are ready. I want to thank you all for joining us today. You know, there's so much going on in the space of housing. I'm glad that we can gather, we can share information, and there'll be many more opportunities that CHAPA has, not just around this issue, but so many over the next few weeks that I want to make sure are on your radar screen. One, CHAPA is launching Affordable Massachusetts. This is a campaign that will bring together multiple sectors, really changing the conversation at the state level and at the local level around housing. Before this session got started today, I was talking with some folks just about how long it's taking to get some of these developments moving forward when we have such a tremendous need. And so we need to change this conversation. We need to make the case for housing, and we need everybody to be involved. So next week, on May 23rd, we'll be having a Zoom session with the Lieutenant Governor, and we'll be bringing together people around this campaign and what needs to happen. There's already 400 people registered, so get in there. It's good to see the energy behind it. And we really, this is our moment. We need to really seize this moment and make sure we rise to it, and we create the homes that people need, and we are creating them in a sustainable way so that we have a strong future here in our Commonwealth. Also, I would be remiss if I did not mention our annual celebration on June 5th. Hopefully you have bought your tickets. It is going to be a blast. We are changing the format. No more seated dinner. Feedback. We hear more networking is one thing. We will get more networking. We will have awesome food. It will not be the chicken that you had at the table. It is very exciting. And we are going to be joined by Governor Healy. The Attorney General will be there as well. We'll be honoring her for the incredible work she has done, not just around enforcing the MBTA Communities Act, but around creating a housing affordability unit at the Attorney General's office. We'll also be honoring Sarah Bartley from United Way and Keith Berry from Wayfinders for their tremendous leadership. So if you haven't got your ticket yet, please do so. And with that, I just want to thank everyone again for joining us, and I hope you have a great day.
Yeah.